money is actually not the deciding factor whether you can be successful or not, but product and customers are. We actually raise a big amount of money, but the company still had to shut down.
Honglei Liu has a PhD in machine learning. At Facebook, he built AI assistants that reach billions of people and co-created the open source tools behind them. At Twitter, he led the knowledge graph, powering over 10% of the company's revenue. There, he watched a well-funded startup collapse around him. Today, he's the co-founder and CTO of Tofu. It's a generative AI platform built to put B2B marketing on autopilot, replacing dozens of fragmented tools with one system. But before he built the company, he learned what actually holds one together.
Being able to trust someone is the number one thing that you should look for when you are trying to look for a co-founder. You should never underestimate the speed of iteration of technology.
But the hardest lessons didn't come from what worked. They came from what fell apart.
When the pandemic was over, the VC market actually stopped pouring money into startups. Then that was a time for the whole company to realize, we can not actually sell our products. I think right now I'm making only a quarter of what I was making before. We actually sacrificed a lot to work on this company.
So why walk away from everything to start again?
We want to build a generational company. We want to build something great. We want to completely revolutionize how people are working with marketing today, especially B2B marketing.
I'm Jay. As a founder myself, I learned something about this journey. The best way to build a startup is not to read a manual, but to learn from your fellow founders' stories. Before we dive in, I have a small favor to ask from you. If you find value in conversations in this channel, please hit subscribe button and turn on notifications. It helps us keep the mission going. And this will be the only favor I will ever ask of you. To wind back to the time and walk through the listeners while this everything begins. Can you tell us a little bit about your early days? After college, you came to study in the US, and then you went to work for Facebook. Tell us a little bit more about that experience.
I started by working on natural language understanding. It was about when you are talking to your class. So we have to understand exactly what you are trying to tell us. So we call that natural language understanding. And then I also worked on a dialogue system. It's about making our assistant to have a conversation with you. And also I worked a little bit on recommendation systems and also machine learning infrastructure, things like that. So it was a very wide range of machine learning related projects, but mostly in the assistant space.
A lot of the audience might only heard about chatbots or ChatGPT and think this type of technology only existed after 2022. But there was a lot of technologies that people used to build a chatbot before, like in LU, natural language understanding, dialogue system that you mentioned. I'm curious about what is your main takeaway from that journey of experience in Facebook?
I would say, first of all, from a technical perspective, I was able to see the evolution of technology. So when I first joined around 2017, we were building intent models using LSTM. And then we had a transformer, we had a bird. And then after I left, actually, we started seeing a huge revolution on large language models. And now, of course, everyone knows all the assistants are powered by the large language models. I would say the learning from there was you should never underestimate the speed of revolution of technologies. So it was only in a few years, to see that, to have an assistant that was literally not able to do anything, to have an assistant that can not only understand text but also video and audio, and also being able to act on behalf of you. So it was not actually when I was first at Facebook many years ago, I wasn't able to actually predict this could happen, even though I had a PhD in machine learning. So that actually taught me that you should never underestimate the speed of iteration of technology. That's on the technical side. On the business side, it was also very interesting to me because, as I mentioned, when I joined, the team was very small, and then we saw a huge demand of people wanting to use AI in their daily life. And then I was able to see a huge growth of the team or the adoption of the product. So that was also fascinating to me to see something that, to see like a product at its early stage and then growing into something that everyone can use daily.
And for that knowledge, now you're starting using that in Tofu.
Hopefully, yes.
Yeah. Cool. I think it is also during this period of time you met one of your co-founders from Tofu, right?
Yes, EJ.
Yeah, tell us more.
So we were not working in the same team, but we collaborated a lot. And at that time, I think EJ was like clearly one of the best people I have ever worked with. So he, when I was collaborating with him, so he was very down to earth. Like he was able to always thinking problem. Like I would say, like the best part about EJ was that he always tried to do the right thing. So that's a very rare quality that I see people, like I see from people. I think one thing that when I was trying to look for a co-founder was whether I can trust this person or not. So clearly EJ was a person that I can trust. And so after we worked together for, I would say like 1.5 years or 2 years, and then he actually left Facebook to join a startup. So at that time, we kept chatting, and I really wanted to eventually start something with him. So I left Facebook and joined the same startup so that we can work together a little bit longer to build even more trust before we can finally start something together.
Tell us more about examples or case that, or moment that you feel, wow, EJ is the person I'm going to work with in the future.
Being able to trust someone is the number one thing that you should look for when you are trying to look for a co-founder. I think at that time when I was working with EJ, clearly I was able to see that like he's the type of person that I can trust. I think that's the type of people that I was looking for, and clearly EJ was that person.
I know that like EJ went to a company called Fast, and then you followed him, and then what happened to the company?
If you have read the news about like Fast, then you will probably know that Fast was a company that raised a lot of money, and eventually they had to shut down due to running out of money. That was during the pandemic when like all the startups were getting an insane amount of money from VCs.
That's also a very interesting journey that you had. Like within a year, you experienced a high-flying startup kind of collapsed.
Yes.
How does that influence your philosophy or your view of startup work?
Clearly, I learned a lot of things not to do when I'm trying to start my own company. Basically, I got a lot of learning from that. The number one learning that I got was never scale your team until you have true product market fit.
Yeah.
And also a bunch of other learnings, clearly. Work-wise, that was definitely one of the best working experiences I ever had throughout my whole career. So I met a lot of fantastic people when I was working at Fast. But even before we had a product market fit, because we raised such amount of money, so the team grew too quickly. When you have so many people without product market fit, and then everyone started to try out the different things, trying to like find the product market fit. And because of that, we were actually spread too thin on trying different directions without actually making real progress. And so we tried that. I think the whole thing, it was very fun. Clearly, we were able to try many different things. As an engineer, I was really happy because I was able to build many different things. But from a company perspective, I think we lacked the focus. So because of that, we weren't able to make progress on finding true product market fit. So when the pandemic was over and the market, the VC market actually stopped pouring money into startups, and then that was a time for the whole company to realize, we can not actually sell our product.
The danger of scaling the team prematurely before the product market fit is the lack of focus.
Yes.
And it actually might be even worse on that because if you have a small team, it's much easier to refocus later.
Totally. You can iterate, you can pivot very quickly.
Yeah, and when you have a bigger team, everyone has their own ideas.
Yes.
You need alignment sessions.
Yep.
So it actually gives them it reduces the chance of finding product market fit by having a bigger team, which is a little bit contraring.
That's so true. When you have a really small team, if your current direction doesn't work out, you can easily pivot.
Right.
But imagine when you have 300 people, 400 people already working on something, and sure, it might not the direction you're working on might not be working great, but if you actually want to make a big pivot, that's a lot more convincing that you have to do than when you only have a few people in your team.
Yeah. So after working a year and Fast, you joined Twitter.
Before I joined Twitter, actually, even though Fast shut down, the whole engineering team actually got acquired by another company called Affirm. So I briefly stayed at the firm for a little bit. I joined Twitter around mid 2022. That was a time when Elon was trying to back off from his offer to acquire Twitter, and then they had a big lawsuit. At that time, Twitter was not even hiring, so I was able to join Twitter because at that time they were trying to rebuild their whole knowledge graph, and I found that's a very interesting opportunity. I didn't stay at Twitter for too long, but one thing that I learned from the process was that during a very chaotic period, I think that's a time when you can truly tell the difference of focusing on a mission than focusing on career growth, I would say. So at that time, when it was very chaotic inside Twitter, but I still met a lot of people at Twitter who are still very dedicated on making the product better. I think that taught me that if you really care about the product, it doesn't matter how chaotic the environment around you is, you can still make progress. So on the product side, when
there's no chaos, then everyone started to optimize performance review, promotion, and all other things. But when the environment is a little bit more unorganized or chaotic, people started following their passion. Exactly. That's so true. Yes. And also that's when you can tell who are the people who are true passion. This is where true passion comes from. Yes. It looks like for you and EJ, you have been talking in Facebook, then you joined the Fast, then you went to Twitter. That lasts for more than a year or two. Yeah. What keeps you both of you motivated? Both of us just really wanted to do a startup. Before EJ joined Meta, he actually had his own startup. He already did a startup before he joined Meta. Similarly, I had a similar experience. As I was telling you, when I was in college, when I was doing my PhD, I always had this passion of trying to start something eventually. So that has always been on my mind. So it's just we were trying to find the right timing for doing that. What was the reason you started Confluent around that time? We started officially spending a lot of time thinking about the product idea around the end of 2022. That was a time even before ChatGPT was released. We only had a GPT 3.5 model. And at that time, we already see the power of large language models. And we were thinking, clearly this is going to revolutionize everything. But we need to find the right problem to solve. The reason was because at that time, before ChatGPT, when we only had a GPT 3.5 model, the model was not even that powerful. The model was clearly revolutionary, but it was not super good at doing reasoning or math or coding related tasks. At that time, it was only good at doing content creation or writing. So Jasper.
Jasper, that's when we thought, clearly we can see the evolvement of technology over time, but we need to find a problem that the technology at that time was already good enough to be used in production. So that's why we, after a few months of iteration, we eventually landed on marketing. That's how we started Tofu.
I think these are probably many founders also very interested in like which directions you want to focus on. And it looks like it took you a few months to figure out the direction, which is the B2B marketing. This time you're still like iterating, doing the weekend project with EJ, and you have the third co-founder join you around this time. What happened? How did you convince the third person join you?
So my third co-founder, Elaine, she was actually working as a partner in a venture capital firm doing investing in startups. And it was a very interesting story for us because at that time when we first met Elaine, we were treating her as someone who is trying to invest in startups. So we were trying to pitch her our ideas. And but what happened was, it turned out that she has exactly the same idea as what we were trying to do, and she has even better ideas than us. So the three of us quickly came together and eventually started this company together.
I'm curious, among three of you, what is the division of duties?
Elaine works on the go-to-market and the sales side of things. I mostly work on the engineering side of things, and EJ is our CEO. Clearly he works on everything, but he also has a focus on product design, customer support, etc.
I also heard about you. You have talked about that you want to build a generational company, not like a niche solution. So tell us a little bit more about that.
When we started this company, now from a financial perspective, I think right now I'm making only a quarter of what I was making before. Similarly for everyone in our company. So we actually sacrificed a lot to work on this company. And the reason why we are okay with doing this is because we want to build a generational company. We want to build something great. We don't just want to make incremental changes. So we want to completely revolutionize how people are working with marketing today, especially B2B marketing.
In 5 years or 10 years, if you achieved your visions, how the world will look like?
About 25 years ago, when Salesforce was started, no one actually knows about CRM. CRM was not even a thing. But now, if you look at in the marketing and the sales space, everyone uses CRM. So we want to do something similar. In about 5 or 10 years, if you really think about it, how we are working on marketing today will be completely revolutionized by AI. There will be a new way powered by AI to work with marketing. So that's what we want to become. We want to become the company that is the company that is offering a new AI-powered workflow for B2B marketing.
What made you start to choose the B2B marketing?
This has to go all the way back before we started the company. Before we started the company, we actually tried many different directions. We actually talked to more than 50 CMOs and head of marketing at different companies. We didn't start by working on B2B marketing, just to be honest. So at that time, we wanted to work on something in the marketing space. That was a time around the end of 2022. So the model's capability was not good enough. It was only good at writing content. And if you really think about it, content, what are the functions in a company that are closest to content? I think it's sales and marketing teams. So at that time, our prediction was that clearly the technology will evolve. But if you think about all the teams in a company, I think the sales and marketing teams' workflow will be revolutionized the first, because that's how the technology will evolve. And so that's why we decided on work on marketing. A lot of founders when they ask me for advice, when they have this idea and they want to start building a company around it, I always tell them my own story, which is do not start something until you have talked to enough potential customers. So that will help you to narrow down what you want to work on and what are actually feasible to be solved. So before you can finally build a business around it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you mentioned this is a great point, because a lot of times after you have this hypothesis, you have some very wishful thinking about what the future will look like.
Yep.
This can only be adjusted after you talk with real users and understand what is the real life they have.
Yeah.
So this is the whole point of the customer discovery process. I'm curious about how you run this process. Did you just talk to them? Did you take notes? What did you do?
It was very ad hoc at the beginning. So at the beginning, we just schedule meetings with head of marketing or CMOs at different companies. So
you cold outreach them?
Yeah, my co-founder Elaine, she definitely has a huge network, so she was able to help us find a lot of people that we can talk to. And of course, we also cold outreach people on LinkedIn as well. So that also helped us to book some meetings. But at the beginning, it was very open-ended conversations. So at the beginning, we didn't have anything to show to them. We just we just asked them, what is your day-to-day look like? And what is your workflow? Do you have any pain points? And we were just trying to understand what's going on in marketing. But then after some time, we started to make it more and more process driven. We would actually come up with some ideas we want to test on. And then we would actually even build a Figma design file that we can show to the people that we were talking to and get their reaction. And then we would come back and fine tune that product prototype and then iterate on it until we find something that people really, really want to use and pay for.
A lot of those feedbacks will be really polite. Very nice.
Of course.
And in the early days of founding a company, you will get you'll get a lot of harsh feedback as well, but also you will get a lot of polite feedback from your friends.
Totally.
And so everything becomes very noisy.
Yeah.
How did you figure out the insights from these noisy signals?
It was definitely very noisy. But one thing I do want to say is that when you actually have some idea that people are so excited about, you will see people's eye pop up. So it's actually, that's the moment that you know, you are definitely working on something that people would be interested in paying for, or you are actually bringing real value to them. I think what you were saying was that, sure, if you directly ask people for feedback, what do you think about this product? Most of people will be very polite and saying, I like this idea. It sounds like a pretty cool idea. But when you actually have something that is solving their real pain point, you will actually see their reaction. You can tell the difference. They are literally saying, can we get it tomorrow? Can we get it next week? Can we actually pay for it? So I think that's a time when you know you are working on something real.
I also want to touch another thing related to that. It's about design partner.
Yeah.
And when I first doing startup, I don't quite understand the difference between design partner and a customer.
Yeah.
And especially you call customer discovery call, I'm a call and talk to them. What's the difference?
Yeah.
But like you mentioned that the reason why they are partner, not your customer, is that they are shaping the future of your company and the product together. So exactly what you mentioned.
Yeah.
And I would love to learn about your early experience of working with obviously the one you mentioned is the first design partner, but also with other design partner. How did you work with?
Gosh, I feel so appreciative of all the patience that our design partners gave us. That's actually exactly like you mentioned. That's the main difference between a design partner and a real customer. So a design partner are the people who are willing to take the risk of trying the early stage prototype of your product, even though they know it might not work, but they still like want to give you the patient and then try out the product. I think that's why I am so appreciative of all the design partners that we had in the early days. I still remember like the first design partner that we had was this company, like when they started using our product when we only had an MVP. And at that time, our product was not even working properly. I have to say, one of the things that we offer to our customers were helping them to build a personalized marketing campaign. So at that time, we had an MVP that can help them generate the content, but because we didn't have all of those integrations, so there was no way actually to run an end-to-end like marketing campaign using our product. So what we did back then was the three co-founders, like me and my two other co-founders, we literally spent 2 days just doing the manual copy pasting to make the whole campaign work for our design partners. So clearly it was also very painful for our design partner at that time as well, was because like they had to give us a bunch of access to their internal tools so that we can make the whole thing work. But it was a very painful process. But I think we were only able to build a true product because of that.
Also, the next milestone for a company is often to get a first check from the customer. When did you get that?
That was around July 2023, I would say. Yeah, like probably like 1 or 2 months after we had our first design partner.
So what is your ideal customer profile and how do you find it?
We iterated on our ideal customer profile quite a bit over the course of past 2 years. So right now we are mostly focusing on mid-market and enterprise customers. But when we started, that was around 2023 and early 2024. We were just trying to find any customer that we can find.
And after you get some customers, and did you what was the trigger for you to start to think about ideal customer profile?
Retention and churning problem, actually. So that was very early 2024 when we started onboarding a bunch of new customers, and we had some churn problems because some customers were not where our product was quite hard for them to use, and they were not getting enough value of the product. And that was a time when we started realizing, we actually had a very different few different segments of customers, and some customers were finding real value out of products, and some customers, they were just not very happy with the product no matter how much we try. So and then we started realizing, maybe it's not the time for us to focus on the customers who cannot get value of our product. Maybe we should actually narrow down our SCP and really focus on the customers who are the better fit of our product. And then maybe later we can further expand to more customers. After we changed our strategy, I think we had to adopt not only a different product strategy, but also a different sales and onboarding strategy as well. Right. So that definitely took us some time to pivot.
And implement from product side.
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah, that's actually the short-term pain many companies need to take. In your cases, you basically created the service areas that the product team need to focus on to build, which delay progress of growing.
Yes.
But also for many other cases, they have to net 1/3 or half of their customers go.
Yeah.
That's more painful cases.
At that time, we were still at a super early stage. So not very hard to pivot, honestly.
Yeah. So you made it very early. So very promptly did that.
Yeah. I think we always had this idea in our mind that we need to narrow down our SCP. Just at the beginning, we were trying to explore a little bit more to figure out who could be our SCP. And then we started narrowing down that.
Do you think it's a wise decision for you to start to narrow the ICP?
Oh, 100%. Gosh, like I can't recommend that enough. Always think about who are your ICP. Even if that means that you are losing some businesses, because it's so important. Like so, for a super early stage startup, you have such a limited resource. You cannot make everyone happy. So you have to be able to find the people who can get a real value from your product, and then really focus on them, make them happy, and make your product better for them. Otherwise, you will spread yourself too thin. I can't say how happy we were to like start narrowing down our ICP.
Also, another factor that often people need to consider about is competition. So when you are entering, especially like marketing, B2B marketing, they're both very broad market, but also they're very competitive market. Like there's many complaints in the spaces. And so a lot of times you have to focus just to be competitive.
Yes.
Can you walk us through the competitive landscapes of the space you are, and what is the position of Tofu?
Historically, marketing and sales are very competitive space. There are like so many different tools, and it's a very fragmented space as well. But if you look at the current market, there are a lot of tools for marketing and sales. They are mostly like point solutions. So you have some tool that is only focusing on making your email campaign better. You have tools focusing on like building landing pages. You have tools focusing on LinkedIn. You have tools focusing on like writing some text copies. Right? So there are a lot of these like small point solution tools, because the marketing space is a very fragmented space. So the strategy that we have been taking is also because of our viewpoint of the market. That is, like everyone actually wants some consolidation of the point solutions. That's where we come in. We want to be the tool that can consolidate the different marketing channels, not only focusing on one marketing channel or one tiny problem in marketing, but also actually building a platform that can connect the different marketing channels together and provide a unified solution for B2B marketing workflows. That's how we differentiate ourselves.
The Omni-Channel.
The Omni-Channel marketing solution. At our core, so we not only generate the content for you for different marketing channels, but also we understand you as a company. So we actually try to build a knowledge graph by ingesting data from your company and also integrate it with your CRM system, so we know your potential customers as well. And by integrating all the data sources together, we have a deeper understanding about your product, your services, your value proposition. And also we use AI to do like outcome research to understand about your targeting companies, like product services and their pain points and your value proposition to them. So by utilizing all of this data, we can generate hyper-personalized marketing content across different channels. And when I say marketing content, I'm not just talking about like text or image. I'm actually talking about the marketing campaign that you can run end to end. So we do a lot of dirty work by integrating with all the marketing automation tools such as HubSpot, like Marketo, like Salesforce, Outreach, Pardot, SalesLoft, all the tools that you currently use. By doing all of this, we can finally create omni-channel marketing campaigns across different channels, because you have this AI layer that is like acting on behalf of human to create the content and managing marketing campaigns across different channels. Then finally, like all the different marketing channels can be connected together in this way.
Wow, that's very, very fascinating. Actually made me want to use it. So what I hear you say is that because of the AI, it allows you to understand the signals and data from all different channels and generate the content in a very reliable, scalable way. that empowers you to do Tofu. So it's the right time to do it. And at the same time, you did all that dirty work for the integration, which is also equally important. That make the whole process much easier.
The reason why we can do this now, again, is because like all the things that I mentioned earlier that Tofu can do was done by human before. So because you have, when all of this were done by human, you will end up having a different team or person working on different channels. And because of that, you will have different processes working like for different channels. And then you will end up having different tools.
I want to dive back a little bit about how you nail the ICP, because you mentioned earlier on you talked about middle market to enterprises. And that is a very different strategy if you compared with if you're talking on SMB or do PLG options. Right? Why did you make such a choice?
You mean why do we do SLG rather than PLG?
Yeah, SLG and target on middle market and also enterprise.
Many different factors contributed to this decision. One thing is something that I mentioned a little bit earlier. So when we first started, we were just we actually had a lot of customers who are small business or startups, like even solopreneurs. And then what we quickly learned from that was like, even though if you target small businesses, it's a huge market and there are a lot of people who can use our tool. But the problem with them is that their workflows are not unified. So it's very hard to build something that can satisfy the needs of all the small businesses. And also, honestly speaking, I think their churn rate is higher compared to like bigger companies. Because like for bigger companies, they actually do very rigorous evaluation before they can actually finally buy a product. So if they do decide to buy a product, that means you are actually solving their real problem. Well, for smaller businesses, they might want to try a product, but they quickly give up.
They also have a higher lateral churn.
Yes, exactly. So that's definitely like one reason. So retention is definitely higher if we target mid-market and enterprise companies. And secondly, speaking, I would say it's more related to our product strategy. So as I mentioned, we want to work on Omni-Channel content creation and marketing, build a unified marketing platform. If you really think about it, actually, like the mid-market and the enterprise companies, they can benefit a lot more from using our tools than those smaller companies. Because for smaller companies, they actually don't have the resource to go Omni-Channel, even if you have the ability to do so.
That's right.
They only care about one or two channels and make it work. That's a rather strategy for them. But when you grow larger, then you start expanding to more channels. And then you can really benefit from having an Omni-Channel solution. That's where we come in to help them.
So I want to dive in another part of the company building, which is how to build a team. Tell us a little bit more. How did you find? You talk about how you define your co-founders, but how do you define your early founding members?
Some of our early engineers, they have worked with us before, and some of them were introduced by our investors, and some of them we just hired them like through interview.
You mentioned about three things, right? Hiring from network, intro by investors, and then the normal how processing. And any advices on the founders who just started, but they don't have that huge personal network for hiring?
I would say just try to utilize all the channels that you can find. So especially try to. You can do outreach to on LinkedIn, right? So even if you don't have a huge network, if you find someone who are working in adjacent areas that you are working on, so give it a try, ping them, and you will be surprised how many people are interested in doing a startup. I think actually that's something that I want to mention as well. So try to find those people who actually want to do a startup to join a startup. So it's very hard for a super early stage startup founder to convince someone from big tech company to join a startup if they are not passionate about your mission, because for them it's a huge risk that they are taking. And honestly speaking, like for people who are really good, they can always find a like really good opportunities, regardless of the job market. So what that means is that you can only convince someone to join a startup if they already want to join a startup.
Yeah.
So I would say just try to find those people.
Yeah, exactly. Such a great point. I think startup is a mindset. Like working in a startup is also a mindset, and usually mindset cannot be changed.
Yeah.
So finding those person and creating the circumstances for those persons to know that they actually love to join startup is a great way to find them. And a lot of times it's like, I realize that I just creating some startup events to see if they join. Like if they join on the, like a weekend or like an evening. Yeah. If they're not waiting even to spend some time just like hanging around, like they clearly don't have the interest in startup at all.
Actually, that resonates with me a lot, because the way that we actually do interview with people is actually embedding part of that into the process. Mm-hmm. So when your team is really, really small and you don't need to hire a lot of people, you can really take the time to make sure that there's a mutual fit between you and the candidate. It's also good for the candidate as well, because for them, joining a super early stage startup, it's a lot of risk for them. Yeah, they don't know, like, especially for people who have never worked with you, they don't know you, they don't know your company, they don't know whether your service is good or not, right? They are taking a lot of risk. Taking the time actually to get to know them. For example, in our interview process, we even give people the opportunity to work with us for a few days or even a week if they want to do so that they can get a really good understanding about how we operate and whether they like it or not.
Yeah, exactly. Also, another interesting thing about finding the good early engineers is that let them define you.
Yes.
I heard a lot of advices from my mentor about building in public. And then when I was initially applying this to when I do my own startup, I initially don't understand why, but later I got it. Yeah. Because no matter how much time you spend on finding them, like you have a limited time. Yes. But they work in a big company, have more free time. So they should have them to find you. And the only way to do that is you building public, show what type of culture and value and value your company is. Yeah. And if they are really already interesting startup, they will be able to follow you. And there's many times that they have been following for a while. Yeah. And by the time they reach out to you, they already want to do startup. Another related question I want to ask is about the team culture and team value. So what is your philosophy on that?
At a high level, we are trying to build a builder culture. So for us, solving a real customer problem is always the thing that we are optimizing for. So we don't care about anything else. We just want to solve customers' pain point, build a better product that can bring real value to the customers. That is what we are focusing on. That is the culture we have in the whole company. Just a builder culture, solve a real problem.
I want to move to another side of the topic, which is fundraising. So tell us a little bit more about your fundraising journey.
So when we were raising for our seed round, it was pretty straightforward. So at that time, we already had our product built out. We already had a paying customer, and we just needed to have some capital to hire people and make our product better. So I think it was pretty smooth experience for us to raise our seed round. And for our Series A round, it was also pretty interesting because we have our existing investor like Signal Fair. They have been tracking our progress for a while, and they like our partner and friends there. They like what we are doing and our progress. And it was pretty natural to get to the next round.
Oh, that's the best part, which you don't need the fundraising VC comes.
Yes, it definitely saved us a lot of trouble. Fundraising can be exhausting, and for us, we would rather spend the time focusing on product and customers.
In fact, you mentioned about a great point, because fundraising is something that founders care a lot. Yes. And oftentimes a lot of founders think like fundraising is the most important thing for the company to do.
Totally. Yeah.
But in reality, for building the product is the most important thing. If you have a good product and the traction, VC comes to you.
But I do want to say that you do need the money though. Like, you do need the money, but once you get them, once you get enough money for you to build a product, clearly focusing on the product and the customer is the most important thing.
Yeah, exactly. I think what I can infer from what you say is that money is very important.
Yeah.
But it's like as long as you have enough money, it doesn't matter that it like highly optimize like how much valuation you have.
I would even add on that, saying that like money is actually not the deciding factor whether you can be successful or not, but product and customers are.
Yeah, it's like you need money to become successful, but it's not actually a determining factor.
No way. The thing about my past experience at Fast. So we actually raised a big amount of money, but the company still had to shut down.
Did you use any framework to make it fundraising a little bit easier? I know it's always hard process, but did you do any trick that made it easier?
Clearly, you need to prepare a pitch deck. So, for us, what we did was we were trying to condense all the investor calls in 1 or 2 weeks, so that we scheduled most of the meetings like within 1 or 2 weeks, so that we can meet all the VCs together and we can make a quick decision from there. Actually, that helped quite a bit because we didn't want to drag the decision for too long.
That's a great quote. In fact, fundraising, you should run it as a process. Like, don't make it too long because that's very distracting.
Totally. It's very, very distracting. I think we literally didn't spend any time improving our product for a whole month because we were like doing those fundraising things. And we were just so happy when it was over because we were finally able to go back to make our product better. So I would say like definitely try to make the whole process like shorter.
Another question I want to ask you is more from your career side. So from your career, you're starting from a very technical background.
Yes.
And a research background, and then doing the R&D in big companies like Facebook and join startup, and now become a founder. So what advices do you have for other technical people who are still working in big companies, who might be still doing PhD to become a founder? So what would be your biggest advice to them?
You need to think, you need to like actually talk to potential customers, talk to potential users, and validate whether this is a real problem to solve until you get to the solution. Which is the most joyful part actually of the whole process, because after you have the problem to solve, building something or solving the problem is actually easy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think this is such an awesome advice. And in fact, the same advice I would give to technical people to do founders. And I've been through a similar journey as you do. But I realized that like it's very, very important in the early stage of company is like trying to de-risk as fast as possible. For technical people, technology is not a risk. They know it's doable or not. All the other things are the risk, whether you can find a customer, whether it's solving the right problem, so just focus on that thing first, then de-risk as fast as possible.
Totally. Once you solve those problems, as I mentioned, building something is actually the fun part.
For people who are interested in Tofu, either as potential customers or join you, what is the best way to reach out to you?
Go on our website, tofuhq.com. And or just email me, honglei@tofuhq.com.
That's cool. That's awesome. Yeah, thank you very much for sharing with the community. It's such a fun conversation.
Thanks for watching the full interview. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and turn on notifications so you never miss the next one.